it just kind of breaks it through. Like, for instance, we saw, you know, that with players like looking for BoarControl to try and break that top 16 finish, but he's got to get through these rounds of was first.
All right, well, that Hunter has a pretty good start. Prince Kelseth, Devilsaur Egg, Terror Scale Stalker. That's pretty much the nuts outside of a play dead.
Yeah, just missing that play dead or, you know, potentially a candle shot. Other than that, this is looking like a pretty solid hand from Conrad.
Yeah, in my opinion, part of the reason why Odd Paladin is as relevant as it is purely to prey on hunters. You know, I think part of the reason why Hunter is good because of all of his tools with the Death Rattle package, but Paladin doesn't care about that. They're just going to rush you down anyways. But when you get a start like this, it'll show you why it doesn't really matter. Hunters can still overcome those bad starts.
Yeah, a lot of times,
really good curves.
A lot of times Hunter wins this matchup by being as aggressive as possible, just like the Odd Paladin is. Odd Paladin goes wider, but sometimes, you know, Death Rattle Hunter can just make a curve like this where they, you know, play a Devilsaur Egg, and then they go Terror Scale, play dead, and they've got suddenly 13 power on board. That's not even including the Prince Kelseth, and they just push some damage face, and Odd Paladin can't do anything because they can't race that. They do, you know, get to the board really quickly, but if they, you know, can't do anything about the power level on the board for the Death Rattle Hunter, it just, you know, ends up.
This one attack to all your minions is a good setup.
Follow-up, you just go Firefly Blessed Maul, and that is so much damage being pushed. Right now, I think BoarControl is trying to end this game before Deathstalker Rexar can even become a card in this scenario.
Well, that's a good point. You know, forget trying to just keep the board state under control. Go for the aggression and force your opponent to deal with it afterwards. Conrad has to show that he has the tools to remove, and he does with Deathstalker Rexar in a couple turns. Can he get to that point?
That's going to be the question, and even if he gets to that point, this Ardent Squire is a 4-1 with Divine Shield behind it. There's no flanking strike set up onto it in the next couple of turns. Deathstalker Rexar isn't going to even clear that off. So, definitely not the best spot for Conrad here. He just has to leave this egg on the board like that. And eventually maybe he'll get some use out of the Terror Scale Stalker. Oh, and a Raid Leader picked up. That's
a really good finish.
The next couple of turns and trying to end the game through Deathstalker Rexar with maybe the Coin Vine Cleaver.
I like that. The Witchwood Grizzly is definitely a problem to consider. Giving it one less health by holding on to the coin. Or perhaps two, because you would have coined out something. This gives another flanking strike target to potentially just dead. It's close. Oh, it's close.
If this wolf isn't clear,
gone for the. I'm like, I do not want them some Devil Soul Rex. That's how I feel like I lose every time by like letting. Or is it Token Druid?
it is token.
It's
It
token.
is close, if not 50-50 matchup. I'm not quite sure how that matchup goes. And then I will say it is maybe potentially favored against the Death Rattle Hunter, but there's been some argument that I've heard that potentially Death Rattle Hunter may be favored if there's no, play like Wisps on 4.
Well, BoarControl doesn't have the Wisp on 4, but he's got Oaken Summon. After the Wild Growth, that is very, very powerful.
Definitely strong, but Conrad will have the best answer with that Naturalize. There's not many targets in the deck to Naturalize, so I wouldn't be surprised to potentially see Conrad just, ship it here. It does kind of affect with the curve a little bit, but unchecked.
Yeah, it's the threat of Power of the Wild, really. That's the big issue. Like, you could, if the ability buffs, Swipe can deal with all those targets. But very dangerous for that reason. However, you do also have ability to justify Ferocious Howl.
Let's see.
It's definitely a close call.
Teacher, though, for the reasons you mentioned. There's how many targets that are better? Maybe Cenarius?
But ultimately, if Cenarius is coming down on the board, you probably lost the game. Other than that, there is the Ghoul off of Ultimate Infestation and an Arcane Tyrant, and that is about it.
Yeah, they're all about the same stats down there.
And at least with the Arcane Tyrants, you can kind of manage them turn after turn. A Violet Teacher, you leave that thing on ones that potentially you may not have an answer for later on.
Yeah, always awkward when you have expensive spells and Arcane Tyrant in the hand, but Arcane Tyrant's like your best play for this turn specifically.
It feels so bad just to play a tempo Arcane
It always
Tyrant.
feels so bad to do
But
that.
sometimes you just got to do it.
It's like the happy goal on 3. You're like, I just do Doctor, or I can just. What should be done.
Dan, you always tap for the Voodoo Doctor.
Chance here. When you play against Taunt Druid, before you
Yes.
can get damage in, so control to do, but man, does it stink.
And one of the issues with is not only do you have to hit that limited window, is sometimes you could just have an insane hand and still lose. Because there are so many powerful taunts in the form of Sleepy Dragon and being able to bring those board states again and again.
Soul of the Forest comes into the hand, but no way to buff it. And it is very vulnerable to a swipe.
We did see Conrad keep one of the swipes in the opening hand. A few ways that I think Taunt Druid can lose, or General can lose, is if BoarControl just plays a Woods. With the intent of either Soul of the Forest, deal with it.
That's actually a big problem with. Let's say your opponent doesn't do a swipe. Well, what do you actually do in the follow-up turns? Like, well, actually, it's just a bunch of 1/1s. I don't have Savage.
Area where there is no buff for these Whispering Woods.
Yeah, so it really feels super weak to play the Whispering Woods in this spot.
1-5, Dan.
And finally, setting up for a nice Primordial Drake the following turn.
And with the branching paths, does worried about trying to utilize that Nourish for draw. Sometimes in Taunt Druid you have that issue. of you ramp really quickly, but since you're not running Ultimate Infestation in the list, you run out of gas quicker than most druids would. So sometimes there is that, you know, debate or balance between trying to use the nourish for draw, but with branching paths, Conrad doesn't have to worry about that now. Makes his decision that much easier.
No attack. Doesn't want to take extra damage so that your opponent can just hero power easily. Ooh, nourish for BoarControl as well. Station the following turn. Crystals push it to 9, gives you 4 crystals through. Keep your opponent's armor important.
May end up using the swipe in a way. The swipe is a little bit, you know, Hearthstone in most cases. I don't think the 1 damage on it, especially at the state of the game where they haven't, you know, played that many taunts, Hearthstone will probably be more beneficial in the long run.
It's a pretty Primordial Drake on the following turn. There's not Arcane Tyrant's gonna die. There plus, you know, it's kind of like you were saying, you know, you have a lot of expensive cards, but Spellstone's so cheap it can fit into so many different combos. We've gotten this far. It seems to be the very obvious play here. The Ultimate Infestation.
Yes.
I think this is all just kind of like a little.
I don't think that changes the play this turn.
They just played Drake. Yeah, you're right, because it's
follow up. Whereas if you Ultimate Infestation, you could potentially.
Areas though, it's not nearly as appealing.
Will be really nice to clear off this Primordial Drake here.
Ooh, yeah.
A card. Okay, so he's gonna burn a card, but there's, you know, not too many high Amphirean. Would be, you know, a detriment. Be potentially an innervate.
Time waits for no one.
Yeah, really much in this position. I'm trying to look at what Conrad's hand is looking at. It's just all like support cards. If he's playing a Taunt Druid, it sure doesn't look like one.
I know, right? This is looking more Malagos Druid with a Tecton Witching Hour. You know, to bring back Malagos, the beast.
Yeah. The Wild Growth, because it's on 9 mana crystals. So I guess Ferocious Howl to start things off, wipe in this position.
There is first to draw 2. That way, if you do hit Carnivorous Cube, there's some consideration for that. This would be better later on as, you know, a rough call. But he would have hit the cube if he had gone for double draw and branching. Doesn't really want to go for that route. Maybe he definitely wants to make sure he has that cube, Hadronox. Because it is hard to kill the Hadronox off.
That's a good point. Oh.
Called it.
Get to cast the rest of the series by yourself.
Okay.
And you didn't take that?
It's the same price every time.
You
Dan.
get...
Yeah, I know, right?
Soul the Forest, Whispering Woods. AoE of some kind or spreading play because they try to rely on... The
Yeah,
good
I'm
news for
trying-
Conrad, he's got a lot of life to work with.
He does a value trade on one of the tokens and then swipe the remaining one. He could, I'm sorry, draw first potentially something else. Could hero power down one of the tokens to another one, and then could, I'm trying to see, how that works out. It's not the most efficient.
Putting at the Hadronox that it only would summon the Primordial Drake back. It's not even that great. So you can start justifying it. Again.
There's definitely a lot of life to work with here, and I think for Conrad's sake, he needs to get this Hadronox down as quickly as possible. So I wouldn't have been surprised if he whiffed on the Sleepy Drake last turn.
Yeah. I think that was like the backup option, but this feels
Especially because if all the minions have to go in, double swipe is on the follow-up to clear up the board to give you an extra turn.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can double swipe and clear them all off.
Because if there's a Power of the Wild wrist, just as we can see in the hand.
Yeah, half of Boar's hand ruins the plan.
The plan.
But then, again.
Time waits for no one.
Looks like BoarControl is trying not to use any. Buffs.
And then sold the bars again. Oh, that's
Intent of
clever.
saving the buffs for a potential Hadronox turn.
I like
I
that.
like this a lot.
This is
where
the
you
best
need-
hedge
This
against
is where
everything.
you need Tree Speaker.
Tree Speaker is very that card pretty hard. Like I was like, it's okay.
I'm still not a fan of it.
I've lost a lot. Imagine, I mean, Tree Speaker's. Like just transforms all your two. You don't get to attack. It's just really hard to remove 5/5s. 5/5s are hard to deal with. And why would one of those weird things, you know?
Seven. You kind of.
You're like, why? How is this card not busted? And then you realize, oh, it's. Yeah. If it said give your treants +3/+3, I think that'd just be like super insane. Don't you think?
Probably.
Yeah.
Especially because it doesn't work with how Mulch Muncher operates.
Yeah. All right, let's count damage. 14 plus 16 is 30 plus branching paths is an extra 14. So 44 wouldn't be enough because 2 of it has to go into the dragon as well.
Could use one of the spell stones.
Oh yeah.
The dragon.
But the opponent's at 48.
I think it's
2 times 7 for the tree ants. Then another 2 times 7 for the branching paths. And then the Savage 16 because it counts the hero. Actually, you get 1 extra damage because of the hero power as well. Or shouldn't go for it because I mean this is. Drawer and branching paths can do.
3. I did not use it.
You were on your phone.
I used the
Unlock your
compass.
phone right
I
now.
used the
Face
compass.
ID that right now.
I have
You're on Twitter, respected.
the slide up calculator.
Big damage. Conrad can respond.
Branching Pass can heal for 12.
Yeah. You gained 20 because of. you gain
You
an
also
extra
have
12.
the
So
3/6 in the pool.
Conrad should be alive. It's actually very big in this spot, too. Let's
Actually,
count.
Cenarius is probably lethal because the Cenarius can buff everything. You also have the
Go to the 4-8, spell. Hearthstone, the 4-6.
Gotta
be. Yeah, I think so.
You just wanna
You
watch
go
it.
back. 8-0. Fantastic play from BoarControl to wrap up victory, and that brings us to the conclusion.